We're in this teaching series called TikTok Theology. You guys enjoying this series? We're in this series called TikTok Theology, and we're talking about reasons for our faith. Why do we believe what we believe? And you may know this, you may not, but God's word actually tells us we're supposed to know the reasons for our faith. We're supposed to know why we believe what we believe. In fact, 1 Peter 3 says this, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks, to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect. God says you're always supposed to be able to tell somebody why you believe what you believe, but just do so kindly. And I was thinking about it this week, and I thought, you know, one of the people that I need to tell why I believe what I believe often is myself. Sometimes I need to remind myself. Sometimes I want to share with somebody I love why I believe what I believe, but oftentimes life happens and I need to remind myself why I believe what I believe. You know what I'm talking about? Like when things are going great, we don't need to ask that question, right? When you got the girl, when you got the guy, when the marriage is perfect, when everybody's healthy, when you got the raise, when you have more money than you know what to do with, it's easy then to go, God is God. God is God. It's when things don't quite work out. When somebody is hurting, when somebody is sick, when we do lose somebody, when a relationship goes bad, when money is a struggle, when life gets hard, every now and then we find ourselves going, wait a sec. Is this whole thing real? Because look what I'm going through. Like, is God real? Does God care? Am I crazy to believe this? You ever thought that? I want to give you a few things that have meant a bunch to me, but what I really want you to do is not just take my word for anything you hear today. I want you to research. I want you to investigate. I want you to ask questions. Because understand this, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And truth is never afraid of questions. God's not afraid of our questions. God's not afraid of your doubts. Truth doesn't have to hide from questions. I love this. Ryan said this to the Austin crew a couple weeks ago. He said, imagine you're in a parking lot and you're sitting in your car and like your car's off, it's in park, and you're just like texting people, and all of a sudden somebody comes out to their car and sees that someone in the parking lot hit their car, and the person blames you for hitting their car. Well, if you know you didn't do it, are you afraid of any questions? Ask me all the questions you want. I'll tell you when I got to the parking lot. I'll tell you which driveway I pulled in on. I'll show you my phone. You can see that I've been texting. Get the surveillance footage. Ask any question you want. Truth is not afraid of questions, and I know the truth. Right? It's different. You ever been caught in a lie? You don't want anybody asking more questions. Leave me alone. Truth's not afraid of questions. So we can ask questions. God's not afraid of our questions. And so, in fact, will you put that slide up of those books? I just want to recommend today 4 books. You can take a picture of that if you want. The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel. The Reason for God by Tim Keller. I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. I'm actually going to be reading some portions of that in today's talk. And Systematic Theology. Now that last one, Systematic Theology, you order that one, you're gonna get what looks like an encyclopedia. But honestly, it's got an index, and you can go into certain chapters and you can read about things that you might have questions or doubts about. But I want you to start investigating things on your own, because it's okay to ask questions and it's okay to have doubts. We just don't want to let our doubts and our questions paralyze us. Because what happens is, nothing wrong with doubts. But if you never ask questions, and if you never investigate, and if you never pursue answers, you might blink and find out that your doubts actually caused you to find yourself at a destination. And the destination is, I just have nothing to do with God because I let doubts paralyze me. Doubts and questions are great as long as we keep asking questions and investigating. Sound good? This is Josephus, who was not a Christian, but the greatest historian of the time. Listen to what he says. At this time, the time of Pilate, there was a wise man who was called Jesus. His conduct was good, and he was known to be virtuous. And many people from among the Jews and other nations became his disciples. Pilate condemned him to be crucified and die. But those who had become his disciples did not abandon his discipleship. They reported that he had appeared to them 3 days after his crucifixion and that he was alive. Accordingly, he was perhaps the Messiah, concerning whom the prophets have recounted wonders. So I don't want you to ever go, well, I can't really think about all this Jesus stuff and whether or not he rose from the dead because, it's only talked about in the Bible and I just don't believe the Bible's from God, so there's really nothing to talk about. Well, that wouldn't be good reasoning on your part because there's a lot of sources outside of the Bible that talk about Jesus. In fact, put that slide up. You can take a picture if you want, but I just wanted you to see it. And I'm gonna get out of the way in case you do wanna take a picture. This is 10 historical sources that talk about the life of Jesus. Again, research this for yourself, investigate this stuff for yourself. 10 different sources, not in the Bible, that talks about Jesus. And I read something this week that was super interesting. A couple authors took what all these 10 historical sources outside of the Bible had to say about Jesus, and they put it together in one document. And I want to show you this. Go ahead and put that slide up. There'll be 2 of these. This is what the historians outside of the Bible had to say about Jesus. Tell me if this doesn't sound an awful lot like your New Testament. Jesus lived during the time of Tiberius Caesar. He lived a virtuous life. He was a wonder worker. He could do miracles. He had a brother named James. That's important. He was acclaimed to be the Messiah. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate. He was crucified on the eve of the Jewish Passover. Darkness and an earthquake occurred when he died. His disciples believed he rose from the dead. His disciples were willing to die for their belief. Christianity spread rapidly as far as Rome. His disciples denied the Roman gods and worshiped Jesus as God. This is history outside of the Bible. So as we talk about the resurrection, we can know, we don't even have to look at the Bible for this. We can know just from history that Jesus is real, that he was virtuous, that he did miracles, that he was crucified on a cross, that he was put in a tomb, and on the 3rd day, the tomb was empty. That's history, all right? Our question is, what caused that tomb to be empty? I believe Jesus is the Son of God because he said he was, because he predicted his own death, burial, and resurrection, because he rose from the dead, and because, church, I've experienced him for myself. And so have a bunch of you. In fact, if you're at a building right now and you have had a personal experience with Jesus yourself, would you raise your hand? Would you hold him up high and everybody look around, please? See, I love this series and that we're talking about reasons of why we believe, but I also believe this kind of information is really, really powerful for us when it's paired or partnered with our personal experience. Think about this, the Apostle Paul, before he was called the Apostle Paul, he was Saul, and he was trying to kill and murder Christians, and he knew everything we just talked about. He knew the tomb was empty. He knew there were 500 eyewitnesses. He knew that Peter had said you could ask everybody and that it happened. He knew everything we just talked about, and he still didn't believe until he had a personal experience with Jesus, and then it changed everything. And I'm telling you, you can have that today. I'll never forget the first time I walked into a church as an adult, and I was I was hurting, so lost, just miserable. I had no hope. So much anxiety, so much depression. Like I was 100% sure I was not gonna make it through the next few days. And I raised my hand and said, I wanna say yes to Jesus. And what I experienced changed everything. Freed me from an alcohol addiction, freed me from a drug addiction, put peace in my heart where only anxiety had been. I remember walking out of that building feeling like 1,000 pounds had been taken off my shoulders. Like I know I had an experience with Jesus. And listen, you can debate my beliefs about the Bible, my beliefs about Jesus. You can argue my thoughts on the resurrection, but you can't argue away my experience. I know Jesus changed my life, and I know he can change yours.